Welcome to This Week in Royal History, where we delve into the captivating stories of royals from around the world and across the centuries. Join us as we explore their profound impact on history and society through their triumphs and tragedies. These royals have shaped the world we live in today, leaving behind legacies that continue to inspire and intrigue us. So sit back, relax, and journey with us through time as we uncover the enchanting and sometimes tragic lives of the royals who have captured our hearts and imaginations throughout the ages.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Margaret of Anjou was born on the 23rd of March, 1430, to René of Anjou, King of Naples, and Isabella of Lorraine. She had 5 brothers and 4 sisters, and her mother took care of their education. In April 1445, 15-year-old Margaret married 23-year-old Henry VI of England at Titchfield Abbey in Hampshire. Her uncle, Charles VII of France, was in attendance. 7 days later, she was crowned Queen of England at Westminster Abbey. In 1448, she founded Queen's College at Cambridge, as she and Henry shared an interest in education and culture. Her only son, Edward of Westminster, was born in October 1453, at which time her husband suffered a complete mental breakdown. Margaret soon became a key factor of the king's party and was opposed by Richard, Duke of York, starting what would become known as the Wars of the Roses in 1455 at the Battle of St. Albans. In 1460, her husband was captured by the Yorkists, and York's son Edward proclaimed himself King of England. Margaret fled to Scotland after losing the Second Battle of St. Albans. Once she was back in France, Margaret joined forces with a former York, Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick. They were plotting to overthrow Edward and restore Henry to his throne. Traveling to England with an army, Margaret and the Lancastrians were defeated at Tewkesbury in May 1471, and her son was killed in battle. Soon after the battle, her husband died, or was killed, while prisoner in the Tower of London, and she was taken prisoner by the Yorkists. In 1475, she was ransomed by her cousin Louis XI of France and lived in France as a poor relation to the king until she died on the 25th of August, 1482, at the age of 52. Interesting fact, many letters written by Margaret during her time as Queen of England still survive today. Catherine Grey was born on the 25th of August, 1540, to Henry Grey, 1st Duke of Suffolk, and Lady Frances Brandon. Her maternal grandparents were Charles Brandon, 1st Duke of Suffolk, and Mary Tudor, Dowager Queen Consort of France, and youngest daughter of Henry VII of England and Elizabeth of York. Through her father, she was also a descendant of Elizabeth Woodville, Queen Consort of Edward IV, from her first marriage to Sir John Grey. Catherine and her 2 sisters had a strong claim to the English throne after the children of Henry VIII. In 1553, Catherine married Henry, Lord Herbert, at Durham House. However, the marriage was annulled a year later after the fall of Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen and Catherine's older sister. Catherine was rumored to be a possible heir to Elizabeth I, but this was shattered when Catherine married Edward Seymour, 1st Earl of Hertford, in 1560. The marriage was done in secret and was not revealed until Catherine was almost 8 months pregnant. Elizabeth then imprisoned Catherine in the Tower of London, along with her husband, where she gave birth to 2 sons. Their marriage was annulled in 1562, and her sons were declared illegitimate and eliminated from the succession. Catherine was removed from the tower after the birth of her second son and was imprisoned with various nobles. She died on the 26th of January, 1568, at 27 years old at Cockfield House in Suffolk. Her remains were moved to Salisbury Cathedral and buried alongside her husband. Anne Marie d'Orleans was born on the 27th of August, 1669, in France, to Philippe I, Duke of Orleans, and Henrietta of England. Her father was the younger brother of French King Louis XIV, and her mother was the youngest daughter of English King Charles I. Less than a year after her birth, her mother died, and a year later, her father married Elizabeth Charlotte of the Palatine. Anne Marie was close to her stepmother, and she had a half-brother from their marriage. Her marriage was arranged when she was 14 years old to her cousin, Victor Amadeus II of Savoy, by her uncle. The couple were married by proxy in Versailles in April 1684, and Anne Marie met her husband in May. Anne Marie gave birth to 9 children, but only 3 would survive to adulthood. Her eldest daughter, Marie Adelaide, married Louis, the eldest son of Louis XIV of France, and her youngest surviving daughter, Marie Louisa Gabriella, married Philip V of Spain. Anne Marie and her mother-in-law, Marie, grew close, bonding over their pro-French natures, which frustrated her husband, who did not like his mother's influence at court. During the War of the Spanish Succession, Victor Amadeus sided with the anti-French factions, and Anne Marie acted as regent in Savoy while he was absent. The war ended in 1713, and she became Queen of Sicily by the Treaty of Utrecht. Her eldest son died in 1715, and Anne Marie and her husband fell into a deep depression. By 1720, her husband was forced to exchange Sicily for the smaller kingdom of Sardinia, but they were able to retain the titles King and Queen. Anne Marie died on the 26th of August, 1728, one day before her 59th birthday. Interesting fact, Anne Marie was the heiress presumptive to the Jacobite claim to the English throne between 1714 and 1720. Her cousin Charles Edward Stuart was born in 1720, displacing her as heir. However, Charles Edward and his only sibling, Henry, both died without issue. Therefore, the descendants of Anne Marie inherited the Jacobite claim. This claim would never come to be with the passing of the Act of Settlement, which excluded any Catholics from the English throne. Arthur, future Duke of Brittany, was born on the 25th of July, 1261, to John II, Duke of Brittany, and Beatrice of England, a daughter of Henry III of England. He became Duke of Brittany in 1305 and remained independent of the French crown. In 1309, Arthur summoned the First Estates of Brittany and permitted the Third Estate to be represented for the first time. Arthur married Marie, Viscountess of Limoges, in 1275, and they had 3 sons, including the future John III of Brittany. Marie died in 1291, and Arthur remarried a year later to Yolande of Dreux, Countess of Montfort. Yolande had previously been Queen of Scotland by her marriage to Alexander III, but he died within a year of their marriage. Together, Arthur and Yolande had 6 children. He died on the 27th of August, 1312, and was buried in Paris. Anna of Brandenburg was born on the 27th of August, 1487, to John Cicero, Elector of Brandenburg, and Margaret of Thuringia in Berlin. In April 1502, she married her second cousin, Frederick, Duke of Schleswig and Holstein. Together they had 2 children, future Christian III of Denmark and Dorothea, future Duchess of Prussia. Anna died on the 3rd of May, 1514, at the age of 26 in Kiel. Her husband became King of Denmark and Norway in 1523 and 1524, respectively. Eleanor of England was born on the 18th of June, 1269, as the eldest surviving daughter of Edward I of England and Eleanor of Castile. While her parents were on crusade from 1270 to 1274, she lived with her grandmother, Eleanor of Provence. She was betrothed to Alfonso III of Aragon for many years, but he died before the marriage could take place. At 24 years old, she married Henry III, Count of Bar, a French nobleman, and had 2 children, Edward and Joan. She died in Ghent on the 29th of August, 1298, at 29 years old, and was buried at Westminster Abbey. Louis XI of France was born on the 3rd of July, 1423, to Charles VII of France and Marie of Anjou in Bourges. The English ruled much of northern France at the time of his birth during the 100 Years' War, and he spent his childhood in Touraine. In June 1436, Marie married Margaret Stuart of Scotland, a daughter of James I of Scotland, one day after meeting her. Louis was 13, Margaret was 11. Shortly after their wedding, Louis went on tour with his father and was named Dauphin, heir to the French throne. Louis and Margaret never had any children, and she died in 1445 at the age of 20. 6 years after Margaret's death, Louis remarried to Charlotte of Savoy without his father's consent, and who was 8 years old at the time. After his father attempted to compel him to his will with an army, became king in July 1461 and left Burgundy to claim his throne. He constantly fought with the nobles and barons of France, some of who began alliances with England against him. Philip the Good's son, Charles the Bold, took up arms against Louis in 1472 in the hopes that England would join him. However, Louis and Edward IV signed the treaty in 1475, which formally ended the 100 Years' War. When Charles the Bold died in 1477, the lands of Burgundy were seized by Louis. With the end of the wars, Louis was able to focus on eliminating local enemies, expanding his royal power, and strengthening the economy in France. Louis and Charlotte had 2 children, Joan and Charles. Louis died on the 30th of August, 1483, at 60 years old, and was succeeded by his 13-year-old son. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Tudors Dynasty podcast. If you love the show and would like to show your support, please head on over to my Patreon page. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Tudors Dynasty for more information. Over there, you're going to find commercial-free episodes. You'll get early access, and there's some exclusive content as well, with more stuff to come as I'm rebuilding it. Also, recently I returned from England and cannot wait to go back. But this time I would love to bring you with me. So if you're interested to go on a tour of England with me, why don't you send me an email, Rebecca@tudorsdynasty.com for more information. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.